Hey guys and girls, just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Buzzsprout. Start a podcast today with free podcast hosting for Buzzsprout, easy podcasting software for hosting, promoting, and tracking your podcast. Buzzsprout is the best way to publish a podcast online for secure and reliable hosting to full iTunes support. Get started for free, no credit card required, cancel at any time.
Stats are for losers.
That's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game.
Welcome to the Airin podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Airing It Out podcast. I am your host, as always, Dustin Marion. I am blessed and honored to have a good friend of mine, John Robinson, on, the founder of Backup CEO. What's going on, John?
Hey, my man. I am excited to hear what you got to ask.
That's cool. What a interesting situation how this ended up being you on this side and me on this side when we've had multiple conversations about a lot of things similar to this. It's funny how things kind of work and come full circle. At least for me, I think you've always been a full circle kind of guy already for the most part.
No doubt. This year has been an upside down world year. So I think that every day that goes by, we have something else to smile about for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been a very interesting year. It's definitely topped all my years. I know you are a little bit more mature than I am, so I'm sure you've never been around or seen anything like this. But let's try to start on a happier note of things. You've been keeping an eye on the playoffs. You've been having fun watching basketball. You know, sports came back.
Yeah, you know what? I have been watching it, and to watch the NBA organize themselves in such a way to keep all of the players in a bubble, literally, and show how much control and power. I mean, this is the time that leaders lead. And watching what's happened with the playoffs, watching what the NBA has done to keep the COVID cases down. I don't even remember how many there's been, but it's been really limited. So they've done an amazing job mobilizing and protecting the players and keeping the sport going. Even though I'm not a fan of my Bulls not being around and some of the teams that you expect to be around, not around, but end of the day, they're still competing. So this has been fun to watch from a leadership standpoint for sure.
You know, that's really interesting that you say that. And I always say on my show, I like talking to smarter people because I've seen a portion of it, but I find that that's interesting to expand on it a little bit more. But these individuals, I guess, flexing their muscle and really showing you that it could get done, right? Like, listen, this is going to happen. We're going to make it happen. And I mean, the rosters are smaller. So argumentatively, you could say that it's a little easier. You know, you're not dealing with like, well, football just happened. You got so many staff members. You got so many people. I think it was yesterday, the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans had a couple of cats on that team that got COVID. But for sure, the NBA, what they have done has been unbelievable. And I even think for a lot of them, even though I question some of the verbiage, but even them taking a stand during this time, right? And having BLM on the floor and letting the players kind of say what they want and not being so constricted and maybe leading the path in that direction. I don't want to lose sight of this, but LeBron James, 10 appearances. This guy is unbelievable. You can say whatever you want about him. No heart. He's not a killer. He's not Kobe Bryant. He's not this, but the guy keeps showing up. He's provided so many lessons for us to try to take away. What are some of the ones that you've taken away from his run?
Well, I start off with the word belief. You know, if we're going to ABC and we said attitude, belief, and courage, I just made that up on the spot. But it's when I think of him, he has that winning attitude, and that winning attitude is from a positive brain, not a negative brain. A lot of people fall into this idea of positive mental attitude. No, it's a positive brain. That dude knows that he can overcome anything. That's his attitude. His belief, he believes in himself. And then he has the courage to take the shots. And if you have the courage to keep taking them, and a majority of the time you are successful, you're going to keep taking them no matter what. And then the people around you will also co-elevate because you can't help but to start to get a little confident. Kind of like with Jordan, when they're like, hey, if you got Jordan on your team, you're just going to win more. You're like, no matter what. So, yeah, LeBron, it has been amazing to watch him, not only his ABCs, but him off the court. Like, that dude does a lot off the court and on the court. So this has been fun. Even though I'm an MJ, you know I'm from Chicago. I'll always be MJ.
Yeah, no, it floors me because this is probably a player that I was able to watch, I guess, a lot closer, and I think a lot of other people were able to watch closer than, Jordan's rise to fame, because he kind of came from like the late 80s, and even I think a little bit with Kobe, because everybody didn't have the Laker channels, and they had to be in the playoffs for us to watch them. Now with all the media, you've seen LeBron James grow from this 19-year-old kid in high school, 18-year-old kid who was a millionaire, and how he handled all those pressures. And I think because I'm a big football fan, winning is infectious. And if you got a guy on your team that has no quit, no matter what, hey, we lost this season, but we're coming back again. Hey, I cramped out in the playoffs, but we're going to come back again. Hey, someone lost somebody. Hey, we're going to come back again and again and again, and just be relentless and just not give up. And, some people could argue he's had an easy life, but not so much in the NBA. He's taken a lot of heat in so many departments, and I'm just blown away by him. I don't even think, and that's what I want to ask you. Is MJ still better in the sense of just this guy? Their resumes are similar, but to be at 10, that's almost like Bill Russell stuff, bro. If he keeps going, where's he going to end up at 15 appearances? I don't see the guy slowing down.
Man, so here's what showed up for me when you said that. And I know I'm going to throw a huge curveball on you with this one, because I never thought about juxtaposing a Bill Gates versus a Steve Jobs or a Jeff Bezos. Nobody says like, hey, is Jeff Bezos better than Steve Jobs? Nobody compares those guys. And then when you sit there and think, well, wait a second. If I compared those guys, they had different resources. They had different time. They had different economies. They had all these differences. So it's really hard to compare a guy who's dominating in business right now. I think Bezos is the richest man on the planet.
Yeah, I think he's number one. He might have surpassed Bill Gates, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So I think he is. I think I just saw something. So he's number one on the planet. And if you say, well, how do you compare him against Steve Jobs? You just don't. Like Steve Jobs, he was before his time. He put technology out there before anybody could see it. Now, with that said, same thing with Jordan. They cannot be compared. Jordan didn't have the size that LeBron has. Jordan didn't have a lot of what LeBron's been gifted with. Same thing with Kobe. They were gifted. They started off on second base in the spirit of the sport. Now, I wouldn't say Jordan started off at home plate, because he had Dr. J and he had all these other guys. So Jordan started off on first base, and Kobe's on second, and LeBron's on second. So it's really hard to compare, because it's not apples to apples at all. Now, that doesn't stop me from saying, who's my favorite? Who do I prefer? I saw a lot of those championships firsthand. So you can't etch-a-sketch that for me. So I'm biased. I in the spirit of, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but in the spirit of, if I prefer one instrument and it's the violin and I try to master it, I'm a violinist. If I prefer the piano and I try to master it, I'm a pianist. If I prefer science over math, I'm a scientist. So in that spirit, I'm a Michael Jordanist. I prefer him.
Well, I definitely he faced probably a little bit more, and probably not a little bit more, a lot more adversity than Kobe and LeBron. I would say too, in an argument, right?
The game evolved. He took more hits than most athletes do today. I was just talking about Jim McMahon. And when Jim McMahon got his shoulder separated after the play was over. And right now you see flags thrown damn near before somebody gets a helmet to helmet. And Jim McMahon had a dude from Green Bay slam him on the shoulder and take him out the rest of the year. The games are different.
Yeah, they definitely are. They've definitely become. I feel like softer is offensive. I just think that it's become a little bit more lax on how defenders play, in the sense of what you're allowed to do, and the referees have changed a lot of it. In the sense, especially football. You don't want to get the Jim McMahon's injured and then put up the third string quarterback and nobody wants to watch, and you kill fantasy and you kill your numbers. So now they're like, wait a minute, they treated it like a business. They said, hey, if this guy's the most important guy, then we got to make sure we protect this guy, because if this guy's not playing, right? I mean, look at what happened to the Niners. People might not watch, right? If the main guy's not in the building, they're not going to watch. So we got to make sure we take care of this guy. But I'm going to jump into football in just a little bit. I really like this whole thing with what LeBron has done and his legacy. And I mean, he doesn't have the same amount of hardware. I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say they win the whole thing. So now his hardware game comes up a little bit. So out of 10, you won 3. That puts you in baseball numbers. So you probably Hall of Fame 300%, but that's 300% on the biggest stage on the planet. Not a lot of people can measure to that. I think it's unfair because Jordan did it 6 for 6, right? That puts a whole nother set of pressure on people. And that was what I was going to lead into, is because I want to get into this. And I think it's really important, because I think you've helped me out with this. Is this part of the problem with us, and not only sports, is we compare ourselves to other people and we measure ourselves to other people. And sometimes when we do that, we lose sight of our overall mission. And sports kind of trains guys to think in that narrative where it's like, well, this dude is better than that guy, and this dude is better than that guy, when it's not really that cut and dry.
Yeah, so here's the space I come from. There's 2 types of motivation. There's a motivation that's external, which sounds like I have to, I ought to, I should, I want to. Because you worry about everybody else. You want to be socially accepted. You're in the space of just trying to survive. Then there's the other side, which sounds like I love to, I choose to, I desire to. That comes from internal. That's fascination and inspiration. The athletes who do really, really well sound like I love to, I choose to, I desire to get better. They're not looking at everybody else. The athletes who are looking at everybody else are struggling. I'll give you an example. My boy Kendall Gill. Last year, I had lunch with him, and I asked him, and I'd never asked him. I grew up with him. He played in the NBA for, 15 years, 17 years. I can't remember how many years Kendall played. And I asked him, I said, hey, man, I've never asked you this, and we grew up from 4th grade. And I said, what was the difference maker for you? What was it? And he said, one thing. He said, I believed in myself. He's like, you remember when I hurt my leg in college? Everybody thought I wouldn't go in the NBA. He was the 3rd pick, I think, 3rd or 4th pick in the draft for Charlotte Hornets. And he always said that anytime he was down and out, he got traded, they had a loss. I mean, he lost when he was with Seattle, and Denver was the last seed. And I think Seattle was number 1, and that was the first time in the NBA that seed beat the number 1 seed. And he always said it was always just me believing in me, and he never compared himself to anybody else. So I think not only in business but in sports, you can get easily distracted by looking outside for your motivation, your encouragement, your fascination, and your inspiration. And you don't compare yourself to anybody, because if you do, you will get in a state of desperation, because that's what that sounds like. Desperation sounds like I ought to, I have to. That's victimhood. But being a hero, it sounds the other way.
Yeah, no, that's really profound. I think a lot of people really have a hard time with that. I think, to be honest, I've even had struggles with that as well. It takes a lot for it to come from within, you know. And I don't know if you watched The Last Dance with Jordan Beaton, right?
Of course, like 3 times.
and the thing was, we were just talking about winning and being around the good people is infectious. It raises up your standards, right? How can you find some of that magic within if you have something practical to share when you don't have that surrounding cast that elevates you, and you really got to dig deep? Because it's hard to dig deep on your own. And that's what for sure separates the greats from everybody else, right? Because they're able to somehow pull it out from within them. And that I think a lot of people have struggles with if they don't have the squad behind them, because not everybody's gifted second base.
So I'll give you one word. The word is create. You create it. And I'll give you an example. On January 1st of this year, I told myself that I wanted to hang around with the kind of guys that were digging into themselves, that were going to stop lying, start elevating themselves from their inferior version to a superior version. Now, again, I'll throw to Jordan. When Jordan learned to master the fadeaway, the inferior Jordan didn't have the fadeaway. And then the superior Jordan had the fadeaway so he could adapt to his game. You know, even when he got muscled up, you know, he was, I think, 25 pounds less than muscle, and over a year, he increased his size. I don't know if it was 25, but I know it was a lot. So
yeah, it was a lot.
He created a superior version. So what I would tell listeners is to really dig deep into your truth and say the inferior version of you right now, like inferior John is ... Superior John in 90 days, because I don't know if you know, on Friday, 90 days from the end of the year, on Friday. So for everybody thinking that, you know, that New Year's resolution stuff, you got 90 days before that New Year's resolution stuff happens on January 1st, 2021. Think about what your superior version is, what your inferior version is now. So I look at that, and I think it's really important to know your lies and reeling myself all the way back in. How do I surround myself with the kind of guys that are trying to evolve and get better? Now, I just threw that question out to you because the kind of guys kind of people that I know master life, they ask great questions, and they start off with, how do I? Now, how do I surround myself with these people? You create it. So on January 1st of this year, I created a Saturday circle where I got 7 guys in a forum, and we just started talking about the week. What have we not figured out yet? What have we figured out? Fast forward to COVID, got to take it online now. Now we have 120 people on the distribution. We get about 25 to 30 people every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. from 9 to 10 talking about whatever is the topic of the week. When Black Lives Matter stuff was going down a few months ago, we were all talking about why Black Lives Matter. So it's surround yourself with the kind of people that are interested in the stuff that you're interested in, and everybody's embracing getting better.
Yeah, see, that's where it comes, man. That's amazing. I didn't think about it. I love the create concept. That's unbelievable. I wanted to ask you, and I think you kind of answered it too, but I'm going to try to stretch it out a little bit more. Are people missing the mark right now, right? Because what I thought was fascinating is like, oh shit, you said 90 days, right? Some people, if you could have took the COVID thing maybe negatively. It's like, no, wait a minute. They just shut the building down. Whatever you've been wanting to create, this is your time to do it. You just got given 6 months, whatever. It could have been crazy concepts. You have 6 months to get it done before they turn the machine back on, right? Now you can create shit. Now I think that what I think is really insane is that, they stopped making movies, right? They had to stop making, music kind of came through a little bit, but that stopped too. So now it gave kind of the average Joe a running start if you started running during this time. And something that I wanted to bring up to you, because I know you understand, with the terrorism of 9/11 and the financial crisis, I think a lot of people came out of that. All right. A lot of entrepreneurs came out of that. Is this going to be another time in history where there's going to be a big gap in separation because the doers are going to start doing and the doubters are not?
The quick answer is yes. The longer answer is the explanation of why. I'm in a community of people that I pay a significant amount to be part of, and they're abundance thinkers. And abundance thinkers think that there's an abundance amount of opportunity. They're not scarcity thinkers who think that there's not that much opportunity. When you're in abundance mindset, all you see is opportunities. In this day and age, guess how many people did really well with producing masks? Guess how many people did well with doing takeout at restaurants? Guess how many people have figured out how to create a new capability, the fadeaway shot? There's some restaurants that were pretty crappy as restaurants, and then now that they have little outdoor seating and stuff, it's packed. I'm like, you were a little terrible little restaurant when you had seats inside, but now all of a sudden everybody's going to your spot. So this is a time to reimagine, and that's the other word. I feel like this is like PBS. It's like a children's show. Like, what's the word of the day? Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's like the word is reimagine. But that's what it is. The kind of people who do really well in chaotic, unsafe, and distressful situations are the people who can reimagine. And here's the shift. For those that are listening, like, hey, how can I shift myself out of this? The world is about distrust, unsafe, and no support. There's a lot of people that believe that. They don't know, should they wear the mask? Should they not wear the mask? Should they trust the government when there's a vaccine? I feel so isolated. I'm by myself. So when they're in that space, they don't even know that they can reimagine a world that they trust 10 times as much, they feel safe 10 times as much, and they help others. This is the time to help as many people as you can, because that's the best currency, because it's relationships. So that's what I've noticed over the last 7 months is I see the kind of people who see it as a divine opportunity, and then I see people in the victimhood mindset that says, woe is me.
I guess the 80-20 rule is always going to exist no matter what, if the buildings are burning down or if they're not, right? Because I just think that this situation magnified that for a lot of people who are probably hiding. And I thought that was interesting, the lying part, right? I think we tell ourselves stories that are probably not true, and we keep digging them down, and we keep on listening to what our parents said and the echo chambers that keep going. You know, something that I've been working on is trying to trust my inner voice. And I feel like all the answers, it sounds so silly, as I don't have the money to surround myself with a lot of, people who are into that abundancy thought process, but there's YouTubes and there's a ton of motivational stuff. And that to me is where I understand, like, wow, there is opportunity to be had and to be found. But I also feel that there's sometimes, people can't get out of their own way. With Seth Godin, how much of his work has influenced the way you go out and do your thing?
I like Seth's work. I've been part of a lot of his programs, Alt MBA. My library has a bunch of books. And what I find most valuable for him is, even his blog, I check it almost daily. it's just his ability to get you to think with a new set of perspectives. And that's why that work has been so important. But I want to reel back before I lose the point that you said that you have had moments where you've not trusted yourself. You've had moments of doubt. For anybody that has those moments, I figured out how to snap myself back into trusting myself. And it's 7 states of consciousness. So the first state is to think. And it's to think about, hey, what's going on right now? To get presence in the moment. So you're starting to lose your usual trust or doubt. Get presence in the moment. The next thing is to reflect. Like, hey, how am I feeling about what's going on right now? So now you have a state of consciousness of your feelings. You have a state of consciousness of what's actually going on, meaning mindfulness. Then the next state is understand. What do I really, really, really want? That's intention. That's ambition. That's direction. So that's another state of consciousness. So those are 3 states of consciousness right now. So when you start realizing, like, man, I'm doubting myself. Well, what's going on? How do I feel? What do I really want? The next thing is to surrender. That means to let go of whatever it is you cannot control. So you just let go. What is it that I can't control that I have to just accept? So that's the 4th state of consciousness. Then the 5th is what everybody has to do is take action. It is do what is it that I am forced to do right now to make this happen. Whatever it is that you said you wanted. Now, if you've been paying attention, think, reflect, understand, surrender, and take action. That's trust. Okay, so you just said you when you have those dips in your trust, that's the 5, but there's 2 more. The 6th state is motivation. Why does this matter? Whatever it is, you got to motivate yourself. You can't get motivated by anybody else. Yeah, you can go listen to videos and watch this and watch that, but ideally you are most responsible to motivate yourself. And you're the only one that knows why this matters to you. And then the last one, 7th state of consciousness, is encouragement. Who are the people that I should be around that will support me? What's the support that I need? So, TRUSTME. So if you ever find yourself ever again doubting yourself, I promise you that recipe, that 7 steps, that, whatever you want to call it, that's been my go-to when I've had those moments of doubt. So, yeah, I don't think I've ever shared that before in a podcast. So there's your gift.
Nice. I got a little bit of gold, but I think it's important, because a lot of people, I know personally people within my close circles right now that are the woe is me and they're from the lacking and they don't know how to punch their way out of a wet pepper bag mentally right now. They sleep all day. They're depressed. They don't have no ambition. It's like, well, and I got to say, it is definitely tough. Like it's weird. I was happy just a couple weeks ago that I was raised where I was raised, because I don't think that I would be in the same shape if I had the same mental toughness if I was already on second base. And a lot of people who are on second base or started off at second base are struggling. And I think a lot of people who haven't had that opportunity are struggling even more. And, when you can't find the job and this is there, that's why I thought it was great also too when you say create, because you can create. I mean, we listen to all these stories, even Seth Godin's, stories. He didn't come from this great epic background, right? But he was able to outthink himself or outthink the situation and be able to put more into the fold. I wanted to ask you, and we'll come back to this. What were one of the things, or what were some of the things, I think I already know the answer to this, but what were some of the things that took you out of, and I think this is important for people to know, from being in the space that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, which is not being an employee anymore and being the owner?
Yeah. So the W-2 to 1099 journey, there's a lot to that. And I'm going to give you. I have so much to say on it, but I'm going to do the best I can to shrink it down. What I know to be true about that journey is that the first fundamental belief is that your capabilities and your confidence are outcomes. And a lot of people believe that you have to have the capability and the confidence to move from W-2 to 1099. No. Once you get to 1099 and you've done it already, then your confidence comes, then your capabilities come. What you need is courage and commitment first. Courage and commitment comes when you're in a W-2 and you're like, man, I don't like this. I want my freedom. I want my freedom to work with the kind of people I want to work with, to do the kind of work I love doing, and to make as much money as I would love to make. Now, you heard me use the word love. Love matters. You got to talk in love. I would love to hang out with the kind of people I want to, do the kind of work that fills my soul, and love to make as much money. Well, you take that energy of love and you make a commitment, a decision, and then have the balls, audacity, and courage to do it. The confidence and capabilities will come later. Most people stay in jobs they hate because they think that they have to have the capabilities already, meaning that they have to know what they're supposed to be doing. And then they think it's, that it's about having some confidence. You know this pretty well. I see more guys, well, back in the day, because not now, but back in the days at the clubs, you see more dudes standing on the wall that have no courage, no commitment, no confidence, no capabilities. They're standing on the wall. The kind of guys that, might not really know what to expect from this fine girl you're going to talk to, but you got the courage to say something, and you commit to walking over there and see what happens. The gift of gab is not, you're not born with it. It is worked. It is worked. It becomes a capability. So I think a lot of people, as they think about how do I move from a W-2, from an employee to, a 1099 or to a entrepreneur, it's going to take some decisions. It's going to take some courage.
Yeah, no, that's a huge struggle, because I definitely think right now is probably the best time. It sounds crazy, but this is probably the best time. I mean, I'm sad, and I know that there are some people that are in dire financial situation, but there were people that I do know that were in better situations, and the government hands you $10K, but yet you blow through it, and you didn't think about maybe putting that money to some use, or trying to figure out your situation to be better. I was reading on your blog, and I found this really interesting, speaking about people you should surround yourself by or with. Your mom and your sisters were huge impacts in your life. I saw that you wrote a little something about you, especially in this climate right now, maybe misstepping or misunderstanding how women should be really treated. What were some of the things that you kind of were thinking about when you were writing that article, and how influential have those young ladies been in your life?
Man, you're talking about a great topic. I would tell you that as men, we have not been taught well. And I've said this a lot when I ask guys like, hey, how'd you learn how to play football? How'd you learn how to play any of your sports? And the guys would be like, hey, I watched it on TV. I watched it, my dad taught me. I played for the baseball team, blah, blah, blah. But the moment I ask men, how did you learn how to be a man? They just say, oh, I'm just a man. What do you mean you're just a man? I'm just a baseball player? I'm just a basketball player? No. It's a process. I think a lot of men were not taught how to be men and how to esteem women. And when I say esteem means to hold value in. as we're growing up, I held value in rims. I had held value in mansions and multiple women. I held value in lots of stuff, which really wasn't value. I didn't really attach to the person. I attached it to a thing. And I think the shift that I've learned through the years is to learn that people are not things, including women. So as I've learned that people are valuable as a whole, I started to reach a level of forgiveness. And like my mother did the best she could. As a single mom, she took a 6-month-old baby boy, me, left a small town like Footloose, went to Chicago with no job, $100 and a high school diploma and a 6-month-old baby boy. And that's how she started our life. And then I had the audacity through the years to be like, well, she didn't spend enough time with me. Or she wasn't doing like they were doing. And then I look back and I'm like, wait a second. Of what she had, she didn't even start off on first base. My mother grew up in a colony for migrant workers. They had no running water, no toilets. And my grandmother had 6 children. And that was my mother's start. If in the analogy of baseball, she was behind the dugout. She didn't start anywhere in the game. So there was a part of me showing empathy. And that's another thing that men aren't taught very much. How to be an empathetic warrior. Like, even those words together, like, what do you mean empathetic warrior? Warriors are supposed to just pillage and kill and this and the other. Nah, no, not at all. So yeah, that body of work lately, and I think it's spilled over into just humanity. Of like, over these last 9 months, there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of people feeling alone and in solitude and unsafe and doubting. And it's guys like us that have to keep putting content out there, keep expecting more of ourselves and expecting more of the people around us so that we can help and be more empathetic. But yeah, this COVID time has slowed me down in a good way to honor people, including women.
Yeah, I think it's really strange, the indoctrination of how they built us up in this world, right? So right out the gate, the girl gets the Susie homemade baker oven. She gets already out the gate, she's got to be taking care of people. She's got a tea set, all of that. They give us like a Tonka truck and a warrior, G.I. Joe guy, and we're running over the guy and we're attacking all of this. And it really does suck that from an emotional standpoint, we're not taught steps, we're not taught tactics, we're not taught techniques on how to manage and deal with certain things. And the only role models some of us have, not all of us, is our dad in whatever that situation is. Whether he's dope or whether he's not, we see that and we try to either emulate it, reflect it, or hate it. And that creates so much more confusion. One of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine on another podcast, the Comeback Journey, Nick Lowry, little shout out to him, was that he was talking about managing your darkness, managing those things that you couldn't let go. For example, your mom wasn't around, so potentially you created some resentment inside, maybe even towards women that they're never around, and then this thing gets perpetuated. How do you personally or have personally handled this? Because you were just saying that it's helped you slow down with the time, manage these dark thoughts within this dark space.
Wow. So for anyone listening, this is a journey. So this is not a finite answer. This is infinite. We will always continue to evolve this understanding. So I have not figured that out. However, I have a lot of insight. And I'll tell you, what I've learned is to really dig deep into my needs and my wants. And as little boys, if you have a need or a want and you have a dad or mom that's like, hey, stop acting like a girl. Stop acting so soft. You don't need this. You don't need to hear me say I love you. You don't need to hear me praise you. You don't need to hear that. So as you grow up as a child, you just think that's normal. And you're like, okay, well, I don't need that or want that. And as you evolve into a man, you start thinking like, well, wait a second, what is my need and want? I'll give you an example. For people who have diabetes, the want for that pound cake, even though your body says you don't need any more sugar, you end up getting the pound cake, and then you end up making your diabetes worse. Some people get their foot cut off. So I think as men, as we've gone through this darkness and this pain, it's because we haven't explored where did our needs and wants come from. Like, I know me, I grew up in an environment that I needed a lot. Food. You know, I remember nights where lights were cut off. I remember nights where there wasn't food in the cupboard. So I just needed basic stuff. Safety, housing, physical touch, appreciation. I just needed the basics. Now, I watch neighbors where they had the new Jordans. They didn't even need those. And those kids that got everything that they wanted grew up and didn't accomplish much of anything. They still probably living in the basement of their parents' houses. Like, I know that to be true. And then I know the other was the hustlers who had to figure it out, had to dig in. They have another gear of ambition and intention. So, but reeling myself all the way back to where you asked, how did I get in touch with my darkness? That's the way I hear when you say that. How did I get in touch with my darkness? Journaling, meditation, counseling, coaching, masterminds, reading, podcasts. Dude, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You know what I didn't do? And this is no knock on a lot of people. I didn't sedate myself. I didn't have any alcohol until I was 21. I smoked weed for the first time, and I think I've done it like 4 times in my life, and that's only been in the last 5 years.
Welcome to California.
Right. But I knew nothing about drugs. I didn't sedate myself, so I was present in my thoughts. When you were talking about those stimulus checks, I know one of my buddies, he is involved in, and I say acquaintance, a guy I run into at a little bar called Nunu's, and I ran into him a couple of days ago, and I knew he got into the marijuana game, meaning delivering or something. And next thing I know, he said he's in charge of all distribution. And then he said, like, they have more sales than they've ever had in the last 8 months. Like, and I said, well, why? They said 2 reasons. The first was stimulus checks. He said when those checks came out, they had $100,000 days because those checks came out. So everybody wanted to get high. They wanted to sedate themselves. They didn't want to deal with the darkness. They wanted to lean away from it. The second time was when the governor started kind of closing things down. So, okay, closing things down. Oh, people are like, oh, shoot, there's going to be a run on marijuana, which there isn't. They have an abundance of marijuana. Scarcity, just like toilet tissue, just like all that stuff, that's not real. It's an abundance of that. But you get people running on it. So those are the 2 things. But if you're a person out there saying, I don't even know what darkness is, I just try to look forward and I don't think about my past, your past will always be there. That darkness will always be there. And until you have the courage and commitment to lean into it, your capabilities to master the darkness and your confidence of what that darkness is, you will experience a high level of overcoming anything. But you cannot hide from your darkness as a man.
That's why I was like super stoked for you to come on the show, bro. Because you not only do you have the insight, but it's tactical, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand the tactics, and sometimes even that's why, like for me, I was saying earlier, watching the vids, I'm watching the vids for the tactics. I might not be getting all the hoopla, but I'm like, bro, all right, now I'm feeling good about myself. I need to figure out how to go execute. Because if it's in the action, what are the actions that I need to be taking? And that's the thing. Like I said, in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, we know tons of people. They ain't teaching you no kind of tactics, bro. In the fucking hood, you're not getting any kind of help. If anything, they're teaching you the tactics to submerge your shit even further, like taking a run on fucking buying all the bud. Alcohol sales went up 600% during COVID. So when you're talking about people not wanting to lean in, that shit is scary. Because if the whole market push, then that means that there's a lot of people that feel like, well, I don't even want to look into the closet. I'm just gonna get lit, and I'm gonna pretend that thing don't even exist. Now, I want to, because we only got a little bit more time. If you can talk to me about the inception of the concept for the backup CEO, and for anybody that's listening that might want to work with you in some capability, what are some of the things that you offer?
So, I thanks for the question. It's called the origin story. And when you're asking for the origin story for someone's idea or someone's baby or someone's like, what's the origin story for backup CEO? Many years ago, I was doing research into vulnerability in leadership. And a lot of people are like, hey, what does vulnerability have to do with leadership? It's like everything. Enron, those cats there had no vulnerability. They hired the kind of consultants that would just tell them what they wanted to hear, and then they decided not to act right and got caught. And I said, you know what? I want to work with the kind of people who want to be challenged, know that they can't protect their six. And I don't know if that's the right frame of it, but the idea of your 6 o'clock is that what's behind you. It's your blind spot. So the idea of the kind of people who know that they want to be challenged, know that they can't see everything, and want to have questions that are asked that are better than the questions they can ask themselves. What I know to be true is people are very, I'm going to say amateur versus pro, because you know the difference with that. You can see a professional, any athlete, and see the difference in an amateur. A lot of people are playing an amateur status when it comes to questions. They don't study how to ask better questions. And listening. Question asking and listening, those are skills that the wealthy have figured out how to master. So what I decided to do is I said, hey, I just want to help the kind of people, small business, big business, that want to have that person challenging them, telling them what they really need to hear, bringing out their darkness into the light, calling them on their lies, and getting them from their inferior version to their superior version. And I've been doing this for 14 years. I haven't driven into an office since 2006. I've been virtual all these years. So now that everybody's jumping on Zooms and jumping on all this stuff, I was doing that 10 years ago when the people who I was working with said, you got to come in the office. And I said, no, I don't have to come in the office. I can create connection with you this way. I can create connection by having conversations. Now what happened? The model came to me. Now I have an abundance of people that I support, and I just stuck to my boundaries. I stuck to what I believe to be true is you don't need to waste an hour of my time driving to the office and driving back for me to be of value to you. So yeah, I in the spirit of verbal expressions, of fascination and inspiration, which I said earlier, I love to, I choose to, I desire to work with anybody who knows that they want more for themselves. And is it life coaching? Is it performance coaching? Is it business coaching? Or is it just somebody who gives a shit about you? That's what it is. And that's what I enjoy doing. And I create lots of gatherings with men and women gatherings to get people to come out of isolation. I feel like I'm bringing men out of the isolation into the forefront so they can do the work that they should have been doing for the last 20 years. Or younger, depends on how old you are.
That's amazing. And I've always known that you've been, I think you've showed me your hand once a few times, and I've always been fascinated by you being ahead of the curve. And this time it paid off immensely, because a lot of people, including myself, had to struggle with that virtual stuff because you weren't ready, you weren't prepared. And I think that's probably another underlining point that our discussion really is been touching on a lot, which is be ready. Right? When you talk about presence, when you're talking about being in the moment, you also have to be ready. So that way, when the next tsunami comes, you've made the adjustments. And then I think that nobody was more potentially prepared for this than you. I also want to thank you so much for your time, John. Tell anybody who wants to get in contact with you, how can they reach out to you?
Backup CEO. So on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, it's Backup CEO, backupceo.com. And then I'll even give my email address, which is johnjohn @backupceo.com. Reach out. I'll tell you this. I smile from ear to ear every day because I have a lot of knowledge to share. I got great connections and a hell of a lot of luck. So if you're looking for any of that and the ability to, ask some questions that you probably haven't been asking yourself, I love to do that too.
Well, I wanted to say before we take it out, dude, it was definitely some kind of energy. Maybe I thought about it myself, because I swear to God, I was thinking about you before I headed over there, and I just walked right out, and I put it in the universe. Homeboy just came right out the building. I didn't even have to call. So I'll just drive around here. It's football Sunday. I think some people, there's an energy that I didn't even know. I thought about you for a sec, but then I was like, let me just go see it. And it just happened to be you. So I know you're a busy man helping out all these CEOs. Thank you so much, John. I really want to get you back onto the show because you have so much knowledge. And maybe next time we can sneak in a little bit more sports, but I know you got some other calls.
About Jordan, for sure. I can't believe we didn't talk about the Bulls, so I can't wait to talk about last season. So.
Seriously. All right, brother. Thank you so much. Take it easy.
Much love.
Stay healthy and safe out there, you guys. Peace out.